They had whispered about her long before the wedding wagon ever reached the ranch. Whispers that crawled through saloons and church benches alike. Cruel murmurs that said no man would ever want a woman built like her. A woman whose shadow stretched longer than most men's pride. A woman whose hands were strong enough to split logs and whose shoulders carried more weight than society ever meant for a bride. Her name was Eleanor Mayfield, though most just called her the giant girl, and when she stood beside other women in town, she looked like she belonged to a different world, a world where women were made of iron and endurance instead of silk and fragility. She had grown up hearing the same sentence spoken in 100 different ways. Too big, too much, too strange, not made for love, not made for children, not made for a man's life. So when she stood in the small wooden church in a borrowed dress stitched to fit her massive frame, her hands trembling despite their strength, she leaned toward the man beside her and whispered the words she had carried like a curse her entire life. My body's too big. I'm not breeding material. She expected silence, pity, maybe regret. But the rancher, Thomas Calder, did not even flinch. Thomas was not a tall man, nor especially handsome by frontier standards, but his eyes held the quiet certainty of someone who had survived droughts, burials, and loneliness without letting bitterness take root. He turned to her slowly, not embarrassed, not offended, and said in a voice meant only for her, "This land has taught me something, Eleanor. What looks barren to fools often carries the deepest roots." Thomas had married her not for dowry, not for necessity, not for rumors, but because when he saw her lift a fallen fence post alone during a storm, he saw resilience, and in her steady gaze he saw a woman who had never been allowed to believe she was worthy of tenderness. Their marriage was the talk of the county, laughed at by men who drank too much, and women who feared being compared to her strength. But Thomas never once treated Eleanor as something to be endured or corrected. On the ranch, he gave her space, gave her respect, and more importantly, gave her belief. Days passed into weeks, weeks into months, and Eleanor worked the land beside him, her boots sinking into the same soil, her laughter slowly returning in small, uncertain pieces. Yet at night, when the oil lamp dimmed and silence crept in, fear would return. She watched other women cradle babies in town, watched bellies grow and lives change, and every time her own body remained unchanged. The old words clawed back, not made for this, not meant to carry life. She never spoke those fears aloud again, but Thomas saw them anyway, saw how she stiffened when children ran past, how she turned away when pregnancy was mentioned. He never pushed, never blamed, never demanded. Instead, he spoke of future harvests, of building a bigger barn, of growing old together, beneath the same sky. Then one winter morning, when the frost still clung to the window panes, and Eleanor woke with a strange heaviness in her chest, something shifted. Weeks later, a traveling doctor confirmed what Eleanor had never dared to hope. She sat frozen on the edge of the bed as the words sank in, her entire life of rejection and doubt crashing against a single, impossible truth. When she told Thomas, she expected disbelief, maybe fear. Instead, he laughed not mockingly, but with a sound so full it seemed to shake the walls and pulled her into an embrace that finally, completely, erased every cruel whisper she had ever heard. News spread faster than wildfire. The same people who once mocked her now stared in stunned silence. The giant bride they said was useless had proven stronger than their narrow beliefs. Eleanor carried that child with pride, not as proof to others, but as proof to herself that her body had never been wrong, only misunderstood. When the baby was born, healthy and loud and perfect, Thomas held his son up to the morning light and said, "This land doesn't lie. Neither does love." Eleanor wept, not from pain, but from the release of a lifetime spent believing she was broken. The ranch thrived, the family grew, and the story of the giant bride became something else entirely, not a warning, not a joke, but a legend. A reminder that the world is often wrong about strength, about beauty, about who is worthy of love and legacy. And if this story moved you, if you believe in untold histories, forgotten hearts, and Wild West tales that deserve to be remembered, subscribe to the channel Wild West Dairies, where legends are reborn, voices are restored, and stories like Eleanor's live on forever.